Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia Jr. Thank you for joining us. And with me, as always, is the ever dutiful Jennifer Woolman. Jennifer, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
I'm running out of adjectives. I'm telling you guys. I'm going to need you guys to start sending me little notes.
I always hold my breath when he introduces me because I'm never quite sure.
Well, today we have a very special episode because we are welcoming a very special guest. Jennifer, will you do the honors?
Sure. Today it is our pleasure to interview Andrea Davis, CCIM and broker of the award-winning Davis Commercial Arizona Real Estate. And she is not only a broker and an educator and an author. She wrote Simply Own It is her second book. She has another book as well called SimpLEASEity about office leasing. But we're thrilled to have her. I met her at the CREI Summit earlier this year, and we just clicked. And when I read her book, I loved it for its simplicity, its title, the story she tells. I felt like it was one of the best books for getting clearly to the heart of not only the why to invest in commercial, but the how. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being with us today.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for the invitation. Fernando, it is so great to finally meet you. Jennifer speaks so highly of you.
I pay her.
So today we will do a little bit of a dive into Simply Own It, the American Dream, increase wealth with commercial real estate. But before we do, give us a little bit about your background, because I love the fact that you have been in real estate basically since birth. It was a huge part of your childhood growing up.
Well, I guess it kind of has, because my family always loved, we grew up in farm country, so it was really exciting when a new house was being built. So my family and my dad was kind of into, construction when he was younger. That's how he made his way into medical school and paid for it. But we would go and watch the construction process of building the houses. And that was kind of our Sunday adventure, is to go out and just walk the footprints of houses. So, I just fell in love with real estate at that point in my life. And took me a long journey to get back to it. But I'm here, and I'm here to stay.
All right. I love that.
And we're so happy you are. And we often speak on this podcast about how everybody pretty much, there are very few people who start in real estate, right? A lot of us come from a different background, different work experiences, but all of those experiences help shape our approach to how we do business. Can you tell us a little bit about your background before you got into real estate?
Sure. Great question. Well, part of it is I actually went to the Culinary Institute of America. So I'm a trained chef. I went to the school in Hyde Park, New York, and I got involved in that. And it was really fun, but I'll have to tell you, even back then, it was difficult for women to be in the kitchen unless you owned your own, and get paid well unless you owned your own restaurant. So, that was a little bit hard to make. But what the restaurant instills in you is how to be service oriented, be timely. I mean, it's an incredible background for anything that a person does in life. It just gives you so many skills. And then I ended up, ironically, in New York City doing acting and modeling. And so I took all of that kind of stuff and I work it into my everyday real estate adventure.
Wow.
I love that. I love that. And then you take it a step further, and I believe you do a lot you're adding construction and investing into your firms, right? Services that you do. But before we go down that road, because most people, I know you started there, right? Didn't you work for a developer at some point?
Well, you have done your homework, Jennifer.
I try.
Yes. Yes, I did. I worked for a big urban infill mixed use development company. I actually started as an executive assistant. And I don't know if either of you have been in a position like that, but we get to learn everything, all the secrets of the trade, everything that happens behind the scenes, and I didn't even understand what that position was until I was in it. But and I didn't know anything about it. So I had this big learning curve. So I just kept learning. And it was a fabulous 3 years working for a developer. Just incredible. The base of knowledge that I got.
I can imagine the experience you got and how it transfers into brokerage. And I find that so funny that that's where you started, right? Because that's where a lot of brokers eventually end up. They work their way because development is so time and capital and everything intensive. The fact that you actually started there, I think, what a huge boon for your brokerage.
It really was, but I didn't even understand what the word due diligence meant when I got the job. I mean, I was so far behind the curve, but every time we had to hire a new employee, whether it was a CPA, I would kind of say, hey, Greg, how do I work a performance? How do I do Excel spreadsheets? Then we hired a due diligence person. Then we hired, CBRE to do the leasing. So I just kept being their best assistant. So I was everybody's best assistant so I could learn as much as possible. But that gave me great roots for being a broker, because when developers come to us, we understand the process. We understand what they need and what makes a good site for what it is they're looking to build or what their client is looking to build, right? And then we understand about zoning. We understand about the city process, the entitlements. We understand timelines. And I mean, I also understand the budget component of it because I learned how to do performas, and I find that really fascinating. And everything's driven, we're always backing into the cost of the land. How much can we pay for the land and actually build the product that is required?
I love that, Andrea, because, what I'm hearing you say is you had a job, but you really were going to school. You went through that university and you absorbed as much as you could. And there's nothing better than learning by doing, right? And following the process. And then really the wonderful thing to see the final result of all that labor is to see the project finished. So it's incredible. I also love the idea that, we always say that everything you learn in life is applicable to new endeavors, new adventures, a new path that you're taking. Love the fact that you were in this chaotic kitchen, right? And trying to make sense of all that work, when you get into the weeds, when you really get stuck, and then you go into a profession that is filled with rejection. You have to learn to deal with rejection in the acting and modeling world, and negotiating for yourself. And then you go to this university where you're learning every single aspect, and I think one of the things that I find very powerful is when people are able to take a complex idea and simplify it to the point that it is widely understandable, which is why we really love your book. And it really goes to the purpose of this podcast, which is demystifying commercial real estate. We want people to really break it down. And so now tell us the impetus for, I know this is your second book. Tell us the impetus for writing the books.
Well, after a while, we keep saying the same thing to our clients over and over and over again. And back in the day, we had paper files, and I realized, by the time that file got about an inch thick, the deal was going to close, right? I said, we'd put in and invested enough time in it and negotiated the letter of intent enough, the purchase contract or the lease enough times, and it was going to close. So that by then I'm very analytical by nature and very process oriented. So I began putting processes in place for all of my clients, and I would give them, here's our timeline sheet. here's the cost sheet, here's what to expect in advance, because it's very complex. This is not renting an apartment, for goodness sakes. And people think that it is, but it's very, very complex. And if the tenant in particular is not paying attention or they don't know what's doing, the landlord has the upper hand and they're just always going to pay for it, literally pay for it as their lease. And I don't mind that landlords make money. I love landlords. I love being a landlord. But let's try to make it a win-win situation for everybody, right? So at the end of the day, I said, I need to write a book on this so that people have and understand the process. I really thought this would be widely embraced by the small business world. 80% of our country is run by small businesses. I mean, that's millions and millions of businesses. Well, I couldn't get a publisher or anything, so I had to end up doing self-publishing. But truthfully, in royalties, I've made $350, but in goodwill within the community and the return on investment for, being the the expert on leasing, it's just returned itself, tenfold, 100-fold. Where I get the most interest from it is, interestingly, is commercial brokers coming into the industry, the young ones that have never been in it. They have
Right.
a step-by-step stool. It's early in the morning. They have a step-by-step tool on how to get through a transaction. And since it's all story-based, they can see where the obstacles come in and possibly discover some ideas or some solutions for problems that come up repeatedly in commercial real estate.
And we too like to teach through case studies because we think it's very impactful when you actually guide somebody through the process. And this book is filled with great case studies. I did want to say before we dive into the book and other topics, there are three things that I picked up. And I know, Andrea, we don't know each other very well, but there are three things that I picked up that I think is important because some of our audience are agents and brokers. And that is, there is unbridled enthusiasm from your end when you're speaking about these things. When you talk about giving your client a timeline, I'm connecting you learning about a Gantt chart in construction, understanding how important it is to be structured, and and one of the things that we always like to impart upon other agents is there are things that you learn in one aspect of your life and your business experience that you can totally apply to the way that you structure your business and how important systems are in order to really be able to scale and in order to make the process seamless for your clients. So I'm hearing that enthusiasm. I'm hearing incredible amount of intellectual curiosity to figure out how do I make the system better, which is something that we always value in even the people that have joined our firm. Intellectual curiosity is incredibly impactful and important, and I totally get all of that from what you just presented. I also hear, and this is the third thing because we like the rule of threes, is there's power in I don't know what I don't know, right? So now I'm going to approach it from my perspective, and that's where that spark of creativity creates a better system, a better approach, and it's really, really impactful. So kudos to you. We're very, very happy that you've joined us today.
Thank you. Wow.
Fernando, I don't know if you can tell, but his previous life, he was a teacher, right? A history teacher. And I think that that's something that you share, even though you weren't actually a teacher in a school or whatever. It is very obvious from the way you've structured the book that you like teaching and sharing your knowledge. Absolutely. And I think that goes well beyond your own analysis of yourself, that you're analytical and like process. I think you also like teaching and the fact that you can do so clearly. So kudos to you. Now let's do a dive into Simply Own It. If you can kind of go through how you're thinking about how you set up the steps. I know a lot of it had to do with the fact that you purchased your own office. So why don't you start with
Well, it's interesting because I actually took the same format of SimpLEASEity, this step-by-step process, because a lot of the steps are similar, right? You got to go first. You have to understand what is commercial real estate and what is market condition and how is it different than real estate, residential real estate. And then you have to start looking into the difficult part on this book was, nobody gets into business and very few people get into business and buy their own building right off. So you have to figure out when is that step, when do you take that step from leasing to ownership. And so for me, while it's a step-by-step process, you also have to understand really crucially up front, I guess the first step is when to take the step to ownership. And so that a lot of times involves lease versus purchase analysis. What does it cost me for ownership? What is the cost up front? What is the monthly cost? What is the return? What are the tax benefits? So that's the first thing that we do is we work with a client to look at when is that right moment to take that first step, right? And sometimes it's that step into the abyss. Well, I had always wanted to own my own real estate, and I'd helped a lot of people do this because I worked on, there was a big rage here in the mid-2000s, office condos. So I did a lot of pre-sales of these office condos all around Arizona, and to the numbers of like in the hundreds. So you kind of get good at this after a while, and you get good at helping the client. This is the first time they've ever done this, understand the whole process. And so we took that process and I put it into a book for them to understand it easier, but I had never gone through it myself. So I got stuck. I'm writing this book, and I just couldn't quite get it until 2020 when I bought my own condo, and I couldn't believe it. I did everything that I told my clients not to do. It was the biggest.
Of course you did.
I paid full market price. I fell in love with the property.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I got caught in the pandemic. My cost of building my space out was twice as much as it was 3 months earlier when the exact same unit across the courtyard was built out by a friend of mine. Twice as much, took twice as long to get it done. I mean, it was unbelievable. I didn't care. It was my office, and it's so beautiful. I mean, and look, not to pat myself on the back, because I had a great architect, Andrea, that helped me out with it, especially the interior design. But people walk in and they literally stop at the threshold of the door and say, "Oh my God." I mean, they're overwhelmed at just how unique and beautiful. It's a triplex. So you come right in at the conference room level, and you either go downstairs into the offices or you go upstairs to offices, right? And then inevitably 20 minutes into the meeting, they just stop again and say, "Wow, I just have to tell you, I just started taking in all the textures. We have glulam beams, we've got wood floors, we've got wallpaper textures, it's just a sensory overload in here, right?" So, but that's the cool thing about ownership. You can do anything you want. And at the end of the day, you not only can sell your business, right? Now you can sell your office. And now you have double your retirement fund, or you lease it out. And now you have something where you can travel around the country or play golf every day, and you have an income. So, I mean, it's just so cool. Ownership is so cool. Don't you agree?
I completely agree. And I love this because I often tell people brokers are terrible buyers, but there is a reason for that. And it is a logical reason. People don't think it is, but it is that we in the business know that we're not buying widgets that are coming out of a factory line, right? And so when you find the right location and the right space, we as brokers know that's not likely to reappear again whenever I'm ready or at the price that I want it. So we often pay full price or we pay over to do that. Now, of course, you got caught with the pandemic and the build out. That was something that you were certainly unexpected. However, you pay full price because this is not if I want that location and if I want that property and it comes on the market, it's not likely to come again whenever I'm quote unquote ready.
It's a long-term investment. And that's
Correct.
what I always talk to my clients about when they're buying. We're not looking at this for short term. We got to look at this for the long term. We got to look at, and that's the other thing about the book. People have to really look into the future. What is it that they envision for their company? Because that's the hardest thing about ownership, right? If you buy too small, you handicap the growth of your business. You can't, you get limited by the boundaries of it. Real estate is a crucial part in the success of any business. Don't you agree?
Completely. And I'll tell you, my favorite chapter in the book, one of my favorite chapters in the book is when you get into a strategic plan, the power of preparation, and you tell the story of Lifeline Insurance and this conversation, which is a very logical conversation about, here's a company that's growing and they're making a decision whether to buy their next location or to lease. And they have, then in the story has a very clear perspective of why he would prefer to lease. And then you say, well, wait a minute, let's go through the process. Let's actually evaluate this. Let's look at the numbers. I love that. Talk a little bit about this step, the power of preparation for successful commercial real estate ownership.
Well, to me, the main difference between ownership and leasing is the cost up front. So if we're leasing typically around the nation, when you sign that lease, it's first month rent and it's last month's rent. When you're purchasing a property, you can do an SBA loan or a conventional loan. You're looking at 10 to 20% down. So that could be 2 or 3 or 4 times as much as you would have to put into a lease. Okay. So that's one substantial thing. The other thing is when you look at a lease versus purchase analysis, almost every time, if I take a market rent and I take a market interest rate and I back into it, those are almost identical what you're paying per month. Okay. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Do I invest in myself or do I invest in a landlord? For the average 3,000 square foot user, 5,000 square foot user, they sign a 5-year lease. That's $1 million that they're signing up for. Why not put that $1 million in your own pocket?
Absolutely.
And to your point of what you did with your office, right? If you're going in and you're doing tenant improvements, you're kind of limited. If the landlord is going to give you TI money, how much money do you have? And how long your time frame is if you're going to be there. To your point about if they're growing, right? If it's a beginning business, they're probably going to lease a smaller space to see how it goes. But they're going to be limited then in terms of what they're going to want to spend on that space if they're projecting that they're going to be moving or adding space to their existing office space. Whereas you, because you owned it and you were investing in yourself and your business, were able to, you spent double because it was during the pandemic. Some other people, if that same thing had happened in a lease, they might have my guess is they probably would have completely changed their vision for the space to make it more affordable because they weren't investing in their own business, right? They don't get to keep it.
Yeah, that is a crucial point, Jennifer. Ownership is about investing in ourselves. So I wanted my office to represent what my company is and what my company can do for you, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to walk my talk. I mean, I'm preaching ownership, and if I'm leasing a building, I don't know. That just doesn't track right for me.
And there are so many examples of business owners that have then, purchased multiple commercial properties in which they're operating their business out of. And then down the line, they decide that they're going to retire and sell their business, but they maintain ownership of the real estate. So now they're getting rental income, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can sell them whenever they want. Now they really have built up an incredible nest egg for themselves and an opportunity to reinvest those funds. And that's where then when you looked at, some of these businesses, people put 30 years of effort into their business to then at the end say, well, I was able to sell a business because it was a business, right? It wasn't just a one operator event. But aside from that, now I have all this real estate. So now I have built generational wealth for my family.
Yes.
And that's really where the partnership is.
It is, and you can put that. A lot of people don't realize they can put that real estate in a trust for their family.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So I love the fact that you have the American Dream as part of the title. This year's Florida Realtors theme was Florida Realtors Champions for the American Dream. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole into, well, what exactly is the American Dream, right? And so according to Britannica, the American Dream is, quote, the ideal that the United States is a land of opportunity that allows the possibility of upward mobility, freedom, and equality for people of all classes who work hard and have the will to succeed, end quote. And I love...
First of all, let's just unpack this a little bit, because nobody has quoted Britannica, I think, in the last 20 years. So,
Okay, well, would it have helped if I said
Hey,
AI
no.
quoted Britannica?
Yes.
I quoted.
I would have quoted Webster, okay?
Right.
There you go. See, so I'm old school. Yes, I still read paper books versus the Kindles, and what I loved about you including the American Dream in your title is that you then go into describing it by increasing wealth with commercial real estate. And so to me, that kind of wrapped up the whole picture in just one simple title: Simply Own It, The American Dream, Increase Wealth with Commercial Real Estate. So in addition to it being a great lesson for somebody who's owns a business to understand better how their real estate, whether they lease it or own it, affects their business, I thought it was a great 101 for brokers and new agents coming in, not only for how to guide them to help their clients, but also for themselves to be thinking about investing in real estate. So can you tell us a little bit? I know you do a lot of education of your agents and other people in the field, and you're often invited to speak. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences that you're seeing in new agents coming into market versus what people like the three of us who have been in the market for more than 25 years see or practice?
We need to embrace this. This is power at its best, right?
Yes,
No.
yes.
The knowledge, the wisdom, and all of this that we get to utilize with our clients, right? And help them accomplish the American dream. And
That's
for
right.
these young brokers to learn from. You know what?
That's right.
I just hired two 70-year-olds. They're the
That's
best
awesome.
thing I ever did for my company.
Mm-hmm.
They come
Amen.
in, they have a work ethic. They know the value of coming into the office. They know and understand collaboration. They know that they can hear stuff in the kitchen by the water cooler that they would never be privy of otherwise. I will not bring on a young broker anymore if they do not commit to being in the office for at least 2 years. Okay?
Right.
We want to work,
Yeah.
and even the senior people, they need to understand each other. They need to understand the value and the power of each broker that comes into the office, because we're all unique. We all have something different to contribute to the culture and the business and the concepts. I've been putting together the business plans for 2026 and 2027. So I had each one of my brokers fill out this one-page sheet. And the key thing we focused in on were what they felt the obstacles were for 2026. So then Caitlin broke that down into different categories and different levels of what we can control. So we started going over them in our monthly staff meeting. Okay, one of them was, I couldn't believe it. Two people came up with laziness. So we started brainstorming, how do we get over? And we actually broke that down into attitude, right? Because we all get beat down as commercial brokers. How do we lift ourselves up and every single day, right? And get over when somebody just says, hey, I really like it. I'm ready to, I was ready to sign the purchase contract, but hey, my landlord gave me a great deal on my lease. I'm going to do that, right? And you're like, whoa, I just gave you 6 months of my life. So we were just working through all of those obstacles, and I was learning from everybody at the table and the contributions they were making. I was like, whoa, I never thought of that one. Oh my gosh, what a great idea. So it's that type of stuff. That's the value of being a broker and having the company and having real estate and having the culture of whatever company you're in evolve and progress over time.
Yeah.
It's a living, breathing entity. Culture is a living, breathing entity, right?
Correct.
It evolves and morphs over time.
And undoubtedly, one of the things that I know that the two of you met at CREI,
Mm-hmm.
and we've spoken that the commercial agent overall, the commercial broker nationwide, it's kind of behind the eight ball in relationship to the residential real estate broker that has very early embraced social media. And so I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about how impactful it has been for you to embrace social media in your commercial real estate business. And what I love about it really is that the fact that we have a CREI and that we have a place to connect nationwide, and it's been very impactful because ultimately this is a relationship business. So I love that CREI has really embraced this idea of all of us coming together who are active in social media.
CRIE, that summit is my absolute favorite conference. I mean, I've been members of AZ Crew, CCIM, and many other ones, ICSC, but that I get the most value out of this one. And it was like when it started coming together, I was like, thank you so much, because I was taking, like you said, we're behind the curve. I was taking residential ideas and concepts and bringing them into my company. Now, we both know that the big corporations like CBRE and JLL, they are handcuffed, right? They've got so many brokers and they got to kind of manage it. But it is really a disservice. So when I went out on my own 13 years ago, I was like, okay, all right, okay, don't tell this to the young broker, but I don't like cold calling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just have never gotten comfortable. I do it, and I figure out how to make every cold call a warm call and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, I thought there was a better way to do that. And I thought social media is evolving. Let me work that. I started working it. And within a year, I had to hire a broker because I had so much business. And okay, so the magic is not just social media, it's the website. And back then it was tied into the SEO engine and then tie that into the socials, right? So it all weaves. I don't understand the magic of it behind the scenes, but I get to reap the benefits. So if I feed the machine feeds me, right?
Right.
We give it
Yeah.
information, it spits back information to us. Now we even have cool things like Gemini and ChatGPT. And I mean, you can overuse that, you can use it incorrectly. But the truth is, it is a powerful tool that we can embrace. So anyway, so I started realizing, oh my gosh, I'm getting a lot of business. I was getting, and still do, 50% of my business leads come from online. And it's the Google reviews
That's awesome.
that really just take it over the top.
Right.
Okay.
For sure.
So yeah, it is a powerful tool. And then the CREI Summit is a wonderful way, again, for us to collaborate, us out of the box thinkers, forward thinking brokerage firms to come together and collaborate and share how we've all been successful. What's our key?
Yeah.
Our key to success within the social world, because it is overwhelming. Let's be real.
For sure.
Mando.
For sure. And also overwhelming is something that you mentioned, and I'm wondering because you're a systems person, and you could tell by the book, and even what you just mentioned, how intentional are you utilizing AI and all the AI tools moving forward in your processes?
Very intentionally. I'm always like, anytime there's something new, like here's a new trend in commercial real estate, or somebody sends me something. Here's the last one that I just love that I got. So I have a friend of mine, he's developing this leads generating AI program. Okay. So I'm kind of helping him behind the scenes on that. And he sent me a little clip. Hey, Andy, take a look at this. Let me know what you think. But he didn't just type it out in an email. He put it up on a screen. He did it, and I was watching, he was talking to me and giving me the demo at the same time. And I'm like, this is so cool. I mean, isn't that cool? Like, how do we go over, if we can't touch base with a client, now we go on and we just do a little screenshot of us talking about the letter of intent. We're scrolling up and down on it. We're editing it. We're redlining it right in real time. And then we send that little video clip over to the client and say, hey, here's my thoughts on the letter of intent. What do you think? Very personal, very right there. And then you don't miss any of the nuances that you might not put into the email.
I love
So
that. I love that.
anytime I can embrace it, I'm always embracing. I'm just always watching how are they adapting the new concepts into our industry and other industries, right? And how can I nab?
So I wanted to touch real quick before we move on to the Arizona market, but what you said about the CREI Summit being one of your favorites. My first one was this year. That's the first one I ever went to. I was scared to death because I understand social media and I embrace it, but I don't like I'm here, I'm there. I'm like, I don't find myself that interesting. I don't think people care what I have to say or where I am or what I'm eating. So they put it in such a great perspective where they talk about how everything interrelates and that it's just another process and it's just another piece of the marketing puzzle and your company puzzle. But my favorite part was that you're actually doing social media while you're there. So they're doing challenges, they're having you talk to people, you're interviewing people. So you're actually creating content while you're there. And to your point about the collaboration, we often speak on this podcast about how people view real estate brokers and the real estate industry as being very cutthroat and sharky and competitive, but it's so collaborative. And the CREI Summit was like that. And, I got to meet you, which was amazing. Now I've got somebody I can refer in Arizona who's amazing.
And vice versa.
So tell us a little bit about the Arizona market. You're mostly out of Phoenix, right?
We're the Phoenix metropolitan area, and that comprised of 26 municipalities. So all of our zonings are different. So when we're working with clients, we've got to understand all these different zonings. We have been put on the map internationally because of the TSMC, the Taiwanese semiconductor plant that is just a little bit north in North Phoenix. That area, if you look at it on a map today, it's all desert, most of it. They're on 6,000 acres, maybe more. They finished phase 1, they're doing phase 2, but it is changing. That whole area is changing. Within 10 years, we'll probably have 500,000 people moving in to North Phoenix, Peoria, Surprise, and North Scottsdale. That's some of the municipalities that run up in that area.
Wow.
The trickle down effect of them coming in and all of the support that plant needs, manufacturing plant needs, is astronomical. It goes all the way down. It filters out probably almost 50 miles radius from the core of that, okay? And a lot of this, we don't have infrastructure. So we're pushing the infrastructure, getting the infrastructure in. Everybody talks about Arizona, oh, water, water, water. Like I'm so over that, right? It's really power that we need. We need power we got big data centers coming in. I mean, the cities are really looking carefully at who they give special use permits to, because how much power they're going to take from the rest of the communities, right?
Right.
So that's our big discussion internally is, where are we getting the power and how long does it take us to put the power grids up? But we've got so many cool, innovative things happening about this. We've got Amcor moving in, we've got ACS, and they bring in their big corporate headquarters. So for us, 100,000, 200,000 square foot buildings, they're doing build to suits. It's incredible. I mean, as real estate, okay, the only way we get to participate is if we have that land listing or we're working with that client to represent them to purchase the land, right? That's the only way.
Yeah.
We're not leasing their space up or anything like that. But again, it's that trickle down effect. Now there's companies that need to support Amcor, and that each of those, now we're getting into all the small businesses that come in. We are on fire. Our vacancy rates for industrial, other than some big boxes that they built really, really big, okay, like all the way up to almost 1 million square feet, that are sitting a little bit vacant. They overbuilt on that, not unusual for Arizona. We're down to, for the average user, 1% to 2%. Retail is so on fire. Again, 1.5% to 2%. It's very hard when we're working in tenant representation to find our clients space. And even office. If you take out the big call centers, when we're out there looking for the average user, 3 to 5,000 square feet, the inventory is very small. And then, you also have to take out the stuff that's old or obsolete. Those landlords, a lot of times, they don't want to do the cost of renovations because the lease rate's way too high for the class of the building. So that's just sitting there vacant, right? It will not be absorbed into productive space for businesses because of the cost of it. So a lot of our offices, the older stuff is just being sold for $175 to $150, $200 a square foot, and it's being repurposed. They're literally taking it down, right?
And so they're really being sold for land value almost.
Exactly. And it's really hard for people out of the country, out of the state to understand. We have so many businesses coming here. We have 400 people a day moving here. We get 2 and 3 calls just from my little company every single week of new businesses coming in, right? And trying to start their companies here. And California is the best friend for Arizona because everybody's running from that state. I mean, they are not business friendly there. I don't know how those companies make any money from the stories that I've heard, right? But people look at the news and they hear it and they're like, we've got so much office and we have all of this and Arizona's overbuilt here. And when they come here, they quickly have to get on board that like all that news it does not pertain to the smaller submarkets and what they're looking to do. And they're shocked at what our lease rates are. I mean, our lease rates with new build have doubled in the last few years. So for a medical user who wants to branch out into one of the other municipalities, they're in shell shock and they don't know how to make their businesses work because their rents are going from $25 triple net up to $45 triple net.
Wow.
Because in the outskirts, we don't have any product, but we have a lot of population. They need the services to do the new build. It's up to the retail stuff in one area called Queen Creek is $65 triple net. That's huge in Arizona. That's not like a Scottsdale Quarter or a Kierland where you have all of these very high-end international retailers. This is just mom and pop stuff.
Well, and you raise an interesting point that I see. I think a lot of areas that are going through this rapid growth, and they tend to be more the smile states, the South and Southeast, is that, so here you have this company, these big companies coming in, starting with the semiconductor company, right? Coming in, the trickle down, but the trickle down means, okay, if we don't have the inventory, we need to build it, which drives up land prices. The cost of capital and the cost of construction right now are some of the highest they've been in decades. Yeah. So you end up with this conundrum where we know we need to build it, but the cost to build it for the mom and pops is very pricey. So are you seeing anything creative coming up or more PPPs, the private public partnerships or anything like that?
Well, if we go into the people that are, building the subdivisions and things, the ones that are still building are the ones that they have their own internal capital source. So they don't have to play by what the lenders want, the 6%, even, if they have a good lender, maybe 5.5%, they can charge themselves any interest rate that they want. Those are the ones that are still out here that are able to build. The multifamily, between you and I, they went into the whole syndication thing. The fat on top of those deals is so big. The multifamily person that says, okay, I'm going to get rid of all that type of investment structure that I have to pay this person off and this person off and this person. I mean, it's like 3 and 4 and 5 deep. That just doubles the cost of that product. So if they could get rid of even half of that, now it might actually be a reasonable venture for them to get out and start building multifamily again. We are a little overbuilt on that right now, so anybody listening to this, don't go building multifamily here right now, but within the next year, we haven't had anything built in 3 years. That product that we're overbuilt on will be absorbed, and then, of course, when the new stuff comes out, we're going to have a lack of inventory and rental rates will go up again. So, but it's the same thing all over. I think we really need to look differently at construction at design, at participation. For the TSMC, I think one of our cities, Peoria, we still have a lot of state land out here that goes up for auction. And usually it's outside applicants and big development companies that go in. One of our municipalities, Peoria, decided that they were going to be the applicant for the land, a big structure of land along the Loop 303 where nothing's built. And because they had this extra bond money. Now, this is a very out of the box thinking mayor, okay? So they went in, they became the applicant. And as they were doing that, because this takes like a year process, they're sitting there working on parceling it out. So it was 684 acres all along the freeway, real close to the TSMC. And they're parceling it out, they're entitling it, they're getting everything lined up for the infrastructure. So as soon as it goes to auction, everything's in place. The mayor signs off on it all. And then they just start, boom, cranking out the infrastructure, okay? So Amcor came in and took 100 acres and they're doing the permitting process the same time. So instead of a 3 or 4 year cycle for that Amcor to get out of the ground, they're going to be up and running within maybe 18 months, 24 months at the most, because the city went in and bought that state land. And you know what else they did? Instead of now, that stuff on the freeways here, it's going between $30 and $65 a square foot. I think it's going to go up to $80 in some points. That city is able to sell their land for $13 a square foot.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
That's another way of taking down the cost of building.
I think it's really interesting that because, I heard that the CEO of Blackstone just had, they had their big meeting and, he had his keynote address and they addressed how much they're investing on the energy side of AI. I think definitely cities need to be very intentional about what happens there, because that's really where the bubble could be, right? People talk about an AI bubble, but they're really talking about the billions of dollars that are going to be invested really in energy. And what the CEO of Blackstone basically said is that they equated it to a gold rush. But they says, we're not interested in the gold. We want to own the pickaxes and the shovels and the buckets, right? And focus on that. And I think that that's a really interesting and dynamic thing that is happening because, I think Amazon 2 weeks ago just opened an $11 billion data center. And the amount of energy that is required to run these models is going to be incredible. And I think that what people are concerned about the bubble is that I think people are going to figure out how to do the AI with less energy requirements. And that's where the overinvestment can be. So, we're living in incredible times. There's so much that is happening. There's so much that is happening all the time. But it's,
it's faster now.
It's faster. It seems like it. I think when you're in commercial real estate, it's like being in the law, like it touches everything in society. So you get plugged into everything that is happening. And so it could be very impactful.
We truly see the future. We create the future. But the other thing, you brought this up, made me think about this, Fernando, is that we really, in commercial real estate and in brokerage, we really have to look at where is our industry going in the near future. I don't see AI replacing us, because it's a very complex industry and it's so relationship driven and there's so many human components to it. But we have to be cognizant that it is changing and shifting. And I think some of the big brokerage firms they're so heavy at the top, right? They can't help but to fall over and collapse. The only reason that they're even surviving is they have different revenue sources, asset management, and they have property management and, all sorts of different things that support the brokerage. But truthfully, brokerage is, we got to pay attention and really be keen on what is happening every single day so that we're moving with the trends and are in front of that wave of what's coming.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything we didn't ask you that you wish we had asked, or is there something that you were thinking that you really wanted to share that you want people to know about? I love how much information you gave on your specific market. It's obvious that you know the numbers.
Yeah.
Again, data. I love data.
Yeah.
I go into the economic development meetings and I'm like telling them like, hey, what about this? What about that? And they're like, oh, I don't try to do it. It just happens.
I
Anyways,
love it.
this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. You all are so incredible and so smart. Oh my gosh. I'm just so honored to know you.
Well,
And
listen,
I
that
can't wait to
goes,
get to know you more.
listen, absolutely. And that goes tenfold for you. This has been incredibly engaging, and we really, really appreciate you joining us today. It's just been wonderful to get to know you and know your story. And again, we want to plug the book, the second book. I know there's a third book on the way, right, Andrea? Maybe.
No, I put her
No?
on the spot.
Yeah.
I think it will be collaborative. So, Jennifer, you might be called.
I like that. I like that. Well, simply own it, the American dream, increasing wealth with commercial real estate, which is what we're all about.
And if you want to invest or buy property in the Arizona area, she's highly recommended. She's highly respected, and you can tell she knows her stuff.
And as we always do, Jennifer always puts the links to all of these things so that it will be in the show notes, so that it will be easily accessible. Thank you, Andrea Davis, for joining us today in this special edition of Between Two Chairs. We want to thank all of you for listening, as always, and joining us. And remember that we are anywhere where you like to listen to your favorite podcast. And we have our YouTube channel, Between Two Chairs. We are on TikTok. We are on Instagram. I love Jennifer's face when I say TikTok. And, we are everywhere where you want to be. So thanks again for joining us. For Jennifer and I, goodbye. Say bye, Jennifer.
Bye.
Man, you never say
Thank you so
bye,
much.
Jennifer.
Come visit in Arizona.
Definitely.